The brand new Ryzen 9800X3D has landed. We've tested it, and at around 5% more powerful than the previous 7800X3D, and major improvements to 1% low frame rates, we officially have the world's new fastest gaming CPU, which is why today I'll be building the fastest gaming PC you can assemble right now, with AMD's new flagship gaming CPU, a top-of-the-range GPU, and some genuinely awesome hardware. I'll be taking you guys along for the ride, showing you the full build process, things that go right, and maybe those that go wrong. And of course looking at detailed benchmarks of AMD's new chips. You can see exactly what it's capable of and just how much of an improvement it offers up over the last gen option. Let's do this. Now I'm pretty hyped about this build because it actually looks like we've got the first CPU launch in a while that might just be worthwhile. Now yes, the 5% performance improvement over the last gen 7800X3D isn't maybe the high double-digit improvement that you may have expected from CPUs a few years ago, but by recent standards, it's quite the upgrade. The 9800X3D builds upon the success of AMD's previous 7800X3D, a chip that's performed so well and was once such a good value proposition, you now can't buy one for anywhere near MSRP. I saw the 7800X3D frequently sit below the $400 price point. Whether this chip's gonna get there and how long it's gonna take is yet to be seen. I'd hedge my bets this is going to be quite expensive for some time, given of course we're expecting new flashy next-gen GPUs. Don't get me wrong, this isn't the CPU if you want really high core count multi-thread workloads. If you look at Cinebench R23 multi-core, it gets destroyed by, well, AMD's own Ryzen 9s, the Core Ultra 9, the i9, to be expected. But when it comes to gaming, it consistently sits at the top of all of our charts in our normalized testing rig. This is both at 1080p, where a CPU bottleneck's more pronounced, and at 4K, where you're gonna have more of a lean towards the GPU. Ultimately, this CPU is a really important release at this point in the market. Why? Because we're expecting new top-of-the-range GPUs from Nvidia in January, and the likelihood is the CPU in that situation will be the bottleneck, meaning this unlocking another 5, 6, 7% more performance is going to have a direct impact on the builds you'll be able to assemble in just a few weeks' time. Now later on, when I run through all the benchmarks of this specific build, we're actually going to swap the 7800X3D in for every single one of our benchmark tests, so you can see game by game how much quicker this chip is, and you can use the timestamps below to navigate through the different sections of today's video. In terms of the GPU pairing, there can only be one choice, and it's a card that, if I'm honest, you shouldn't actually buy right now. This is the RTX 4090. Today I've gone for the Founders Edition because, well, I think it just looks really cool. Now I'm using this card because it's, well, the fastest card on the market right now, and it's going to give us the best performance when combined with our 9800X3D. However, if you're going to build this build, or thinking of building this build, wait until January. We're widely expecting the RTX 5090, which would push things further. Now, as far as motherboard and RAM and SSD goes, in this board, I'll be using the X870 Taichi. I wanted to use a high-end X870 board for this build anyway, but full transparency, as part of receiving the CPU before embargo from AMD, they also send out a motherboard and RAM kit that they have validated to work. I'll list the other 3 boards from MSI, Asus, and GeekaWhat. They gave us a pick of the 4 boards. I've not used the Taichi before, so I thought it was a good chance to get hands-on with them. I should clarify at this stage, like all of the media coverage you'll be seeing on the embargo day today, this video isn't sponsored by AMD. They haven't seen it before it's gone out, and all of the opinions, of course, are my own. But we're using a board that's been validated as far as the BIOS and the chipset to work the best with these new CPUs. Now let's have a quick look, shall we, at this board in a bit more detail, because the Taichi range has got quite the reputation. And straight away, you can see why. It's stacked with PCI Gen 5 support, so you've got room for an NVMe fully toolless on the side, and down here just below the CPU as well. You've then got further non-toolless NVMe slots, the all-important AM5 socket, a release to easily take out and release the GPU latch. The rear I/O is pretty stacked too. We've got a 5 gigabit Ethernet port, optical audio, loads of high-speed USBs, including USB 4 Type A and Type C, as well as some ultra USB power ports, which are going to provide better power delivery to your devices when they're plugged in. As far as the design goes as well, you can see it's a pretty sick, subtle black and gold color colour scheme, which I really, really like, and I think makes the board look, frankly, pretty awesome. For the RAM in this build, I'm going to be using this G.Skill Trident Z5 Neo. This is a Cout 28 kit with a 6000 MHz clock speed. This is the two-tone black and white design. You can also find the full black design in RGB and non-RGB derivatives, which we've used before in builds here on the channel. SSD-wise, we've got a very special edition Samsung 990 Pro. This is the Worldwide Olympic edition. This is going to be a really great bet for this build. As far as Gen 4 NVMe goes, it's about as high-end as you get. AMD did send this SSD out, and the 990 Pro is what we use anyway for our standardized benchmark rigs. If you wanted to go higher end and you wanted truly the fastest gaming PC, you might want to consider a Gen 5 solution like the Corsair MP700 Pro or a drive along those lines. I'd also recommend picking up at least a 2TB, not a 1TB derivative for a build like this. Without any further ado though, I think it's time to install our 9800X3D into this build. I'm guessing AMD are going to have further X3D CPUs in the near future, maybe, I don't know, CES. A little disappointed to only see one, but this is the important one in the market right now. First up is going to be, of course, the CPU. Really easy to get this installed, just align the triangles and close the socket. RAM is next. I'll be using the second and fourth slots if we're counting across from the CPU outwards. And then, of course, the NVMe drive into the very top slot just below the CPU. At this stage of the build, I also want to talk very briefly about CPU cooling. Our benchmarking so far has tested the 7800X3D. No, the 9800X3D. Well, that and the 7800X3D with a 360mm and a 420mm. 360 is more than adequate. And as I say, no overclocking on this build, so it's not as though we really need loads of extra cooling capacity. I think the horrendous power consumption on 14th and even 13th gen to a degree just made us all kind of buy these really expensive, massive radiator coolers that we just don't need anymore, which is a good thing. This right here is the Phanteks Glacier 1 360 D30, and it basically has those really nice sort of daisy chain fans on with ARGB that look absolutely gorgeous, and I think in the case I've gone for, it's going to look amazing. So you can see 3 of those fans. We're going to deal with those later. The radiator comes nicely packaged up, which is good to see. What I'm bothered about though is this bag right here of mounting hardware. I want to see how this cooler is going to install onto an AMD based system so I can do any of the prep before getting the motherboard into the case. Now, if I remember correctly, AMD. Yeah, this is pretty easy. All we need to do is simply remove the pre-installed black plastic brackets but above and below the CPU socket and replace these with Phanteks AMD standoffs. This is nice and easy and just helps us out a little bit later. With that nicely sorted, the next step is to move this into the case. Let me clear a little bit of room to bring into play this, the Phanteks NV5. I always say 7, I don't know why. I think that's because the NZXT like H7 is there like mid-tower and this is a similar kind of form factor. One of my favourite cases of the year, the NV5, really like it. Build quality's amazing, all the panels are just super solid. The only disadvantage really is that you don't get any fans included, so I've had to go out and buy some of my own, but that is fine. The only thing I was slightly worried about earlier, I forgot when I requested this motherboard, it's E80X, which kind of doesn't really need to be. I don't really see a particularly densely packed PCB, but anyway, I'm being pedantic. However, it looks like the However, it looks like the NV5 has got enough clearance to support this board. I guess it's only one way to find out. The only thing that I think might get in the way is going to be that vertical GPU mount. Maybe. Yeah, that's looking like it's going to be in the way. Okay, I'm going to remove this vertical GPU mount just here. I may be able to add it in back again once the motherboard's been installed, but for now, coming out. Once that's out, the motherboard is then going to slide in, hopefully without too many problems. Yeah, that's looking good to me. And as you can see, you can still get to all the rubber grommets. The NV5 for E80X builds, absolutely no problems. As you can see on this board, we've got 3 screw hole locations at the top, 3 down the middle and 3 down the bottom. These all need fastening nice and tight to hold the motherboard permanently into place. The next stage then, once that's in, is the cooler and the fans. Now there's a lot of fans to install here, 1 at the rear, 3 on the rad at the top, 3 on the side, 1 on the bottom. I've got Phanteks D30s for this. They've got the right models, so I've got some reverse, some standard, so they look good from all angles. A lot of coolers and fans to install here, which can only mean one thing. It's time for a return of the GeekaWhat Montage. Oh yeah. What did you think of that? Pretty cool, right? Yeah, maybe. Okay, anyway, moving on. 2 components left. Now, originally, I'd planned to use the Phanteks AMP 850 in this build. However, I changed the card over to the 4090 in this build. Originally, I was going to go for something lower end, and then I realized actually building the fastest PC possible would be better. So I'm not going to go for this. Instead, I'm going to go for a higher end 1000 watt unit, as that's going to ensure enough wattage for our CPU and GPU combo in this build. I'm going to go ahead and put the new 1000 watt power supply into this system, just to give us that little bit more headroom before then finishing off with the GPU. All the cables and wiring is going to be pretty easy in this system, and you can view a full cables and wiring guide over on the channel in the cards section now. All that remains then is to pop in the 4090, and yes, again, if you're going to replicate this build at home, soon to be the 5090. Now, let's take this out of the box. Do love the Founders Edition design. It is just one of the best looking cards I think Nvidia has ever made, the 40 series FE. Now, in terms of which PCI lanes need to be removed, this is actually going to be a slightly interesting question. Best thing to do is to hover the graphics card over the top slot, and yes, in this build, we're going to be installing the 3rd, 4th, and 5th. I suppose for us rather unhelpfully, that also means taking out the very large multi sort of lane cover at the bottom. This bit's a bit clanky, and you can see what I mean here. Can't just take out an individual PCI lane. Instead, I've actually got to take out the whole block. Very much a first world problem, but still a slightly annoying thing to have to do, and I don't really fully understand the benefit of this approach from Phanteks. But a very, very, very minor detail. And then, with a bit of luck, all we need to do is slide the graphics card into place. That latches really nice and easily in this ASRock board. Tighten the screw in. Yes, look at that. And the whole build really is starting to come together. The final thing really to do, other than the front panel cables, is to pop into place a GPU power connector. And on this power supply from Cooler Master, there's actually a slightly unique element to this cable. And I was going to say, and that's because it's actually right angled, which is better, but in this case, that's most certainly not better. Oh dear. I'm going to have to order some sort of PCI Gen 5 power supply extension to cover that, because it's not very attractive. The only other option, I guess, would be to have it come sort of over the graphics card, but I think that doesn't look particularly great either. And on that bombshell, the build is kind of ready, so should we boot it up and see how it performs? So then, performance. Where does this 9800X3D land? And is it the new fastest gaming CPU on the market? Well, here are the detailed benchmark numbers. Now, you can see all of our synthetic benchmarks on your screen now, and pause if you care about these numbers. But let's look at gaming. Now, at 1080p, first of all, where you're more likely to be bound by a CPU than by a GPU bottleneck, we saw results that were positive for the 9800X3D, but hardly game-changing. The bigger improvements came in the 1% lows, where the 9800X3D sees far more significant uplifts across the board. This is important as it's going to hugely increase the consistency of the frame rates you see and reduces the number of drops and stuttering within gameplay. In Alan Wake 2, for example, the frame rates were very similar, with a percentage change of around about 2% on the 9800X3D versus the 7800X3D. All of this data is fresh data, by the way, so the CPUs have both been tested in the exact same config with the same RAM, same motherboard, same BIOS, and same Windows versions. Now, in Apex Legends, we were pretty much hitting the 300 FPS frame rate cap, so we can kind of discard that result. While in Call of Duty's Black Ops 6, we saw a minimal performance increase for the 9800X3D of around 1.2%, with 236 versus 233 frames per second. The improvement in 1% lows is more pronounced, moving from 127 to over 138 frames per second. Cyberpunk was a little more pronounced, with 13 FPS or so difference at 1080p high settings. All of these are rasterization numbers, by the way, so no ray tracing, no DLSS, no FSR, no frame generation, none of that, straight raster. While Fortnite gave us the biggest difference. Here at 1080p, we actually saw around 10% improvement on the 9800X3D versus the 7800X3D that came before it. Again, the improvement in 1% lows was strong here, in fact particularly so, moving up from 180 frames per second on the 7800X3D and RTX 4090 to a 1% low of 258 FPS on this new X3D chip. Now on the other end of the spectrum, we also ran a load of 4K numbers, and here we actually saw a fairly mixed bag when it came to the frame rates. Now in Alan Wake 2, for example, we saw a few more frames per second, around 4% uplift from 71 to 74. Cyberpunk 2077 was very minimal with virtually the same frame rate between the two. Fortnite had again a more pronounced increase of around 8.8% give or take in frame rate, while Apex and Black Ops were actually worse. Now in AMD's own press materials, they actually show the 9800X3D doesn't necessarily beat out the 7800X3D in all circumstances, but from our testing we can discern the 9800X3D is a faster chip, but not by a great margin. The 9800X3D still provides phenomenal performance, and at the price point, which AMD have kept under $500 and well under £500, it represents a pretty good value bet if you're looking for a gaming CPU and a gaming CPU alone. Now, I would have liked to have seen larger generational performance uplifts between the 7800X3D and 9800X3D. And if the rumors on the grapevine are that AMD sort of maybe not rushed this CPU out, but brought it out far earlier than they would have otherwise intended, as a response sort of to Intel Core Ultra, that has to be viewed as a bit of a mistake. Because, well, Core Ultra is not really boding much of a threat to, well, anyone. The 9800X3D, though, is a faster CPU, and if you want the best of the best, especially for those next generation top-end GPUs, which will again put more emphasis on a bottleneck that's CPU side rather than GPU side, this might just be the chip to pick up. Even if, as I say, the generational performance uplift isn't quite as great as what I would have hoped.